Hello, everybody. Welcome to Global Visionaire by WWD China. I'm Regina Sito, your host today. Global Visionaire continues WWD China's mission to connect China with the global creative and business community, creating a platform for dialogue, perspective, and cross-culture exchange. Through this series, we hope to bring our audience conversations with leaders shaping the future of fashion and retail across markets, with a focus on what really drives results. Today, I'm really happy to be joined by Drieke Leenknegt. She is a visionary and a global transformational brand and business leader with more than 20 years of experience across the US, China, and Europe. She spent nearly 2 decades at Nike, including senior leadership roles in China, and later served as CMO at Timberland and Vans. Drieke has led some of the industry most influential partnership work, helping build Nike's global collaboration ecosystem with partners such as Virgil Abloh, Travis, Scott, Tom Sash, and working with China's, tennis star Lina, as well as Timberland's recent collaboration with Pharrell and Louis Vuitton. Last year, Forbes named Drieke one of their top 50 most entrepreneurial CMOs. So for our audience in China, Drieke brings a really valuable cross-border perspective. And today we'll discuss collaboration as strategy, what makes it durable, and what turns it into noise. So thank you so much, Drieke, for joining us today. Really, really appreciate this.
And thank you for having me.
So, looking at your career across Nike and your CMO roles at Timberland and Vans, what is the most consistent thread in how you build brands and teams across the US, China, and Europe?
Yeah, I worked, it's looking back is interesting. So
Yes.
looking back together with you is interesting. I've worked in the different parts of the business. I worked in product. I worked in as a GM. I was driving a P&L. I worked in different regions. I worked in different brands. I think the common thread or the constant thread for me, and I will give you words: disciplined, consumer obsessed, brand building, and commercialization at the same time. I do is the belief that short-term performance and long-term brand equity must be fully integrated. To build a brand and the process to elevate the brand, which then by default equals brand growth and revenue growth, is as much an art as it is a science. And there is a methodology behind it, right? It just doesn't happen like that. And there are well-defined components, non-negotiable components that you need to have in that methodology. I'm just going to name a few.
Mhm.
One
Yes.
is it all starts with the consumer. You need to know everything about your consumer and the culture that surrounds your consumer. How do you do that? One-on-one, qual, and at scale through data. So it starts there. The second thing, equally important, is you need to know yourself as a brand. Who are you? What's your mission? What's your value proposition, right? Three, and this is where discipline comes in and rigor comes in. The go-to-market process needs to be good and efficient, right? But your product and what you propose to the consumer needs to be great. Marketplace, right? You have to have a strategic point of view on your retail proposition. And then this entire process is powered by talented people and data. So, and at the core of everything, right? Having worked in different regions, I think this process is pretty universal. Then there's, of course, these local nuances. That's where the difference is.
I love that, this process is powered by people and data. So let's talk about this local nuances. So when we first met each other in Shanghai, you were at Nike and I was at LVMH. So what did you learn from China about consumer culture, the pace of market, leadership, how has that influenced you now that you are back, in the US, operating globally?
I spent 5 years in China. We spent 5 years in China, joining Nike at a time when business was under pressure. We first reset Nike sportswear as a category and a business, and then I moved into my move to the women's business as a GM, driving the women's business in a time that was
Mhm.
critical
Mm.
for
I
the
remember.
brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would say China shaped me in three lasting ways. One is what I've learned is the integration between speed and long-term vision. The market moves at an incredible pace, but culturally, there's also the deep respect for long-term horizons. And bringing these two tensions together is something that is born in Chinese culture. So that's one. Second, the consumer, right? At the pace and the integration of social retail in China. In China, social retail has been embedded in daily life for more than a decade. While if we look at this side of the globe, it's just in its infancies. And then I would say the other thing, what I've learned from a consumer perspective is how layered China is and how many different segments, consumer segments you have in the different regions, in the different cities. And I think a lot of global brands go to China and they hyper focus immediately on a Shanghai, on a Beijing, while there's so much untapped potential in these rising mega cities in China. So, and then the third, I want to say the third thing that shaped me is leadership, strength, and the collective culture in China is extraordinary. I've always been a collaborative person and a collaborative leader, but China reinforced, I would say, for me that executional rigor, shared ownership, and collective drive to then truly unlock performance. So when I returned to the headquarters for Nike after my journey there, I think I came back faster, more disciplined, and even more team oriented than ever before.
Wow. So your China experience like clearly prepared you for actually today's market, too, because it's just so much faster, the market, everywhere. And the platform competition and the consumer culture really accelerates, all these like, collaborations needs as well. So let's talk about when you think about collaborations today. You've been doing this for a long time, but like, today, what makes them like durable versus like short-term noise? And what it has to be true for you before you even say yes to a collaboration?
Mhm. Great question. When I talk to CEOs and business leaders, I like to compare collaborations with the metaphor of a turbo engine.
Okay.
Now, we are all here in corporate environment working for these brands to unlock growth. And that is a day-to-day process. And so for me, building growth, building brands, elevating brands is the engine. Now, here comes the turbo. The turbo and the functionality of a turbo is that it puts extra air into the engine for then the car to go faster. And so for me, collaborations is the turbo. When you, on the condition, and we will talk about that, when you do them well, right, they are accelerating your brand, they are accelerating your business. And the other way around, if you don't do them well, they are noise or they can harm your brand and they can harm your business. Now, to answer your second question, within that, the mistake that many brands and leaders make, and I've seen it and I see it all the time, is that they are hyper obsessed with the
Mm.
who they want to work with, and everybody has an opinion. I like this person. I like, oh, he's amazing, blah blah. While actually, the real question is the why. And this is something that I personally learned from Mark Parker, former CEO of Nike and designer at heart. He said, look, for collaborations to be impactful, you need to be able to answer the question, why? Why are you doing this? And so the whole process with the consumer and defining the growth opportunities upfront. Because when you do that, right, your collaborations will have a meaning. Which then leads to added value, right? You begin with your consumer insights. You look at your strategic growth plan and you define where the opportunities lie. And when you do that, right, you might look for other partners than you initially started with, right? The most impactful collaborations are the ones where you bring brands and partners together to collaborate on something together that you cannot do on your own. And it goes back to do that. You need to go into the conversation on both sides, have with a clear goal of what you want, right? That's why I always say the best collaborations represents the 1 and 1 equals 3, right? You come together to create something that you can't do on your own, and you create new space, which then gives you more enterprise value, right? Which then will accelerate your brand and your business.
That is great. I mean, focusing on the why, because definitely I have seen so many brands who just like focus on collaborations, focus on the who, and they completely forgot the why. And it's like, and then the whole work is like basically lost because, they cannot answer any, why questions. So, in your point of view, I hear that like, collaboration is the turbocharge. But like, what is the role of this turbocharge, overall for a brand and business strategy? Is the charge primarily, of collaboration for cultural relevance, product innovation, community building, or pure business growth? What should it be? This like, turbo.
Every brand and every business, that's different, because you might be an apparel driven brand, and in the next 5 years your growth needs to come from footwear as a new category, or the other way around. You are a footwear driven company and you need to grow your business for women's by building looks, therefore you need to unlock your apparel business. Now those are two different opportunities, and so when you put that upfront, when you define your goal upfront, right? It leads to different directions and it leads to different collaborating partners, right? What is the primary goal should be the primary goal that you as a business unit and a brand unit define upfront. And I think a common mistake that I have seen people make is that they believe that every collaboration should create an instant hype across brands on many successful, impactful collaborations, and half of them are long term. Satoshi Abe, Sakai, and Nike is a great example. She started with apparel many years ago. But then Nike and as a team, we quickly saw that the opportunity for her with her expertise and bringing her expertise in was to unlock growth of women's sneakers. And mind you, many years ago, that was still a big opportunity for, and still is, for a lot of brands. Now, we brought her in to hyper focus on that problem, on that opportunity. And which led us as a team to, with her, designing the Nike Vapor waffle, which was a disruptive proposition for women and sneakers at that moment in time. But fast forward to today, right? The Vaporflies and the many sneaker innovations that she works on are still being reissued and commercialized. From a growth perspective, we're talking businesses should look at collaborations as well. Not only let's get in short term, look at a long-term return on investment that you can create by doing them in a meaningful way and connecting them with the growth opportunities that you have from a business perspective, short and long term.
I so, agree with you because so many leaders even, they are looking at short-term hype and forgot about like, the long-term business reason why they did these collaborations. The real business objective, as you said, it's like a meaningful collaboration should last and actually return value, repeat, value to the business. So let's talk about collaboration, from a different angle. How do you manage like creative, ambition, creatively, while still delivering like, business and commercial results? Especially many times, teams have different KPIs, different definitions of success, even within the brand, forget about just like, talking about the brand with the collaborating, force, partner. So how do you manage, those differences?
They need efficiency and effectiveness that is driven by strong operating models that you then combine with the great art part of the business. And today, I would say with AI unlocking new ways of creating and distributing content, the differentiator, I think, will be taste combined with rigor, consistency, and operational discipline.
Yes, I mean, but to be honest, I've seen it, and so have you. The balance between taste and business rigor is definitely not a simple task. And like, and I think this is like the balance is where sometimes we see good decisions and bad decisions, are being made in that like, the balance moment. So let's talk about this like, really kind of complicated decision process, of balancing art and science, taste and business. So you were speaking about this, uniting art and like, science for business. So this collaboration process, what do you think matter more? Like, data matters more or like, intuition matter more? How do you resolve this like, tension? We see the tension, quite a lot, even good collaborations or not so great collaborations, this tension always exists. So how do you, resolve the tension?
Data analytics and insights. Data analytics, the analytics is the what, right? And you need to have that. You need to be able to get the data, have access to them, because that is another opportunity for a lot of big enterprises. But then what is equally important is that you need to have insights. And the insight is the why. You need to be able to look at the data and contextualize them and to be able to give context and have understand and contextualize them. You need intuition. And intuition for me is based on experience, and experience is based on expertise. And expertise is based on having the knowledge because you have done it over and over and over again, right? And that's what experience is about, right? So, for example, for me, looking back and looking forward, my mother had a sporting goods store. Yeah, and I don't know if we ever talked about that.
I never knew that your mom owns a
Yeah,
sporting goods store.
yeah. So she had a sporting goods store and a men's fashion store. And so I worked in her store from the age of 10, 12, right? And so then fast forward, me entering Nike for 20 years in different regions, from different perspective in the business, from a business perspective, from a GM perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a product perspective. I have being consumer obsessed, with consumers, reading consumers' behaviors, qual and quant, for over 22 decades, been in retail every single day, right? And been obsessed together with everybody around me, about product. Now, that is experience. And so I think in today's world, it's really important that the leaders who make the decisions for the growth and the unlock, for the business, right? They should not only be able to read the data, they should have an intuition that is based on experience, that is based on expertise, to contextualize the data and to make sure that they are then making the right decisions to move the company forward and to fix the right problems in the right way. The best leaders for me are the ones that can do both. And I think it's going to be a common thread here in our conversation. You need to be able to read them the best way, but you need to be able to contextualize them in the right way. And if you don't have the intuition, you're going to make the wrong conclusions and mistakes will be made.
I mean, now I understand more. You've been working on retail since your age of 10. Now, that explains a lot, you know. So absolutely, you're right. I think understanding the reason why behind the data can, understand the context behind the data is so important before making a decision. Let's look on like, to leadership because
Yeah.
like good leaders need to make those decisions. And how does like so when you lead across US, China, and Europe, what are some of the cultural differences you see on leadership, and what do you think matter most in terms of team collaboration, decision making, and execution? Because I hear time and time again how culturally different, like, China is versus like US versus Europe, all the time.
I have to say, then I answered them back and I said, actually, it's the wrong question. I think the question that we should ask ourselves is, what are the similarities? Now, mind you, you need to understand the differences to understand the similarities. But for me, I think we should punch it above the weight, of regions and countries. And first ask ourselves, what do we have in common? Because if you punch it above the weight of a country, there's one thing that we all have in common, you and me, coming from different
Mhm.
countries, is that we are all part of the same club that is called the human race on this planet. And so there are, common truths, that we all have in common. There are certain emotions that we all have in common because we are all part of the human race. So, for example, when, a loved one, passes, the pain that we all have, which is human, it's ingrained in our human destiny, is as if your heart is being ripped out. The pain to, say goodbye to a loved one is universal. Now, the way we mourn and the way we grieve is different, right? The expression of that, common truth and human emotion is different in Belgium, where I come from, Belgium, and where you come from, right? In Belgium, we need to wear black or dark colors. It's a Catholic country, so the way we, say goodbye to our, loved ones is very driven by the religion there. Belgians, which is what we have in common with Chinese people, we love food, right? And so when somebody passes away, you better make sure that the food at the table is the best because you get rated based on the food. But in African countries, the way they, grieve is completely different. Now, that is the cultural nuance. And I like to use the word nuance. That's why I love the word glocal, right? Is what is it? What is the commonality? But then how can you work with the regions to then bring local nuances into what you do as a brand as a whole?
Yes, I mean, I think it's absolutely true, about, you know, human, universal human, like, culture, because I don't really know what, culture doesn't send love through food, to be honest.
Mm,
I think every culture, send love, express love, happy or sad in occasions, but they really express love through food. That I think is a universal human truth with local expression. It could be
yes.
sandwiches, it could be dumplings, it could be noodles, I mean, but I mean, it's some form of food. So can you share one real example, from your experience in China, either a collaboration that actually really works or, that one that didn't? But, and what is the, specific difference? Is it like, because it worked or didn't work because of partner fit, a product problem, a platform, or internal alignment?
Hmm. Well, I think there's many great experiences and successes. There's also failures. I think failure is part of success. You can't get to success,
You
especially
learn from it.
you learn from it, and especially because if the pace is high,
Mhm.
But anyway, I would say to pick one. I'm very proud. What I'm very proud of is when we unlocked the women's business in China. And yes, I can sit here and say we grew double digit year on year. But more importantly for me, we inspired back then, and I'm now talking 2011, no, 2012, 13, 14, but we inspired women to embrace sports, get them into running, get them into training, and sports makes great leaders. I strongly believe, especially from a female perspective. So it's more meaningful, I think, than yes, we grew the business as such. What made it successful? I think it's not one thing. It was the integrated offense that unlocked this level of growth. First, the integrated offense between bringing together training, running, and lifestyle, building a community around these sports made it successful. Resetting the retail experience leading with her in a cross category way across a 6,000 store fleet and elevating this proposition across product, across experience and service for her. And then, as part of that journey and talking about, again, localization, Nike is about athletes, and Nike will always be about the spirit of enhancing an athlete's performance. And the athletes is front and center for that brand. And so, what we then were able to do in partnership with Global is to, for the very first time, to create uniquely a collection together with Lina as this local amazing hero in and of China. And so you bring that local nuance in a story that is very typical for Nike. So I think those that integrated strategic offense was what led to success. But then I honestly, the true unlock behind it was the internal alignment because I had the honor to work with some of the most talented Chinese individuals in my team. And then maybe one thing that I do want to add here, because a lot of what I'm saying goes back to consumer obsession. Um, from a consumer perspective, Chinese women are a powerful and rapidly rising consumer force. They're growing economic independence, evolving lifestyles, and increasingly very sophisticated tastes. Again, we're talking about taste, are reshaping the market in profound ways.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a great, case, in a sense, because it's really not about just one thing. It's about thinking the whole, ecosystem of like thinking. I mean, I'm sure it was not easy, doing cross, efforts across all sports, and like, functions in Nike, with 6,000 different stores. That's a big task. So the internal alignment and the whole ecosystem thinking is definitely, a great takeaway, for, yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Mhm.
power and the base for success
Yeah.
is the strength of the cross-functional
Hmm.
process and
Yes.
the bringing together of incredibly talented people
Hmm.
drives the success. And there's nothing more beautiful, I strongly believe, than celebrating success, but also failures, going
Yeah.
through failures together
Hmm.
as a brand, as a team, as a collective, as a business.
Great. Like, so, okay, one last question. I think we are like, running out of time. But so one piece of advice for you to give to the brand leaders or partnerships, collaboration leaders in China who wants to build collaboration and brands that really resonate culturally and being able to sustain over time.
Um, Actually, I would actually go back to where we started. I think, and maybe I sound like a broken record during this conversation, but in everything you do, unite the art and science of the business. Bring um, culture and commerce together. I think collaboration and brand building only become sustainable when creativity is matched with discipline. And for leaders in China, and actually for leaders everywhere in the world, you have to bridge the core tension of modern business and delivering, I would say, short-term performance with very, very important, while, let's say it like that, protecting long-term brand equity and value creation. You can't see these as separate tensions. They cannot cannibalize each other. And as a CEO or as an executive leader, but all of us, we have to strive to bringing them together because that's where cross-pollination happens. And when that happens, you create new space. It's because in the end, you need to move your business and your brand forward. And I strongly believe that this is the way. And I strongly think that businesses and leaders still look at them as two separate things that cannot be combined. They have to be combined for the business to be successful. So it's a balance that is not easy, as you said, but it's essential.
Yes.
And in many ways, that's the China way.
Mhm.
The ability to move fast while thinking long term, that's
Mhm.
what China told me. So perhaps I'm not giving new advice. I'm just reflecting it back.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dreka. Um, you know, So it's a great conversation and how like, China and actually all the, leaders of the world should also like try to combine the short-term moving fast and how to blend it and fit it into like, the long-term value and goals. So thank you so much for your insight today and for your advice. Truly, truly appreciate, our conversation. So for a quick takeaway, so collaboration is really not a marketing tactic. It is a business strategy. And it should really solve, like, as like Drake has said, a business question and deliver real value. Either it's growth, product innovation, long-term equity, and it's really the why that matters. It's like, otherwise it would just become noise. And collaboration or any kind of like, new business really need the support and thinking of the entire system. Everything, together, product, brand, retail, digital, internal alignment, and the discipline execution is really key. And we've learned from like, Drieke today. So thank you so much, Drieke. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope to see you all soon.